This is the first episode in a series I call Flat Earth Strawman. A strawman is an intentionally misrepresented form of an interlocutor's argument, which is replaced for the actual argument because it's easier to defeat. Taking this approach in an argument is a fallacy called attacking a strawman. I will be doing the opposite, exposing the strawman to reveal how it differs critically from the real argument and producing support for the real argument. The Oxford Dictionary also defines straw man as a person regarded as having no substance or integrity. So the title of this series serves two purposes, as it also highlights how little substance there is to the flat earth movement and the unprincipled charlatans who propagate it with dishonest tactics. Today we look at my perspective and his half-hearted attempt to debunk the heliocentric model based on observations of Venus. A link to his video is below, but I will play the relevant parts of the 7-minute video here. Let's skip his opening remarks, which are just typical fluff and personal attacks. From 135 to 148, we see.
And I said that if Venus orbits the Sun, right, so there's the Earth. If you're in the night time of the Earth, on the ball Earth, you can't see Venus. Venus's orbit must be greater.
So here MP shows a very out-of-scale representation of the Earth and its orbit, Venus and its orbit, and the Sun. He also shows it from a perspective that makes it difficult to test the proposition of whether Venus can be seen from the Earth between sunset and sunrise. Continuing.
Then the Earth's orbit around the Sun for you to see Venus at night. That makes sense, right? So what this fellow was saying, no, that the terminator line, if you're looking across from that terminator line, you can still see Venus. So let's have a look at what he's saying.
Here MP repeats a blunder rarely seen since the dawn of the Copernican model of the solar system and Galileo's telescopic observations of the phases of Venus. MP claims that Venus would need to have an orbit outside of Earth's to be able to be seen during the night. We skip ahead a little bit.
So let's stop and think about it. Remember, at the terminator line, there's the Sun, right? So let's have a look at it. There's the Sun, there's Venus orbits the Sun. That side of the terminator line is day. You're on the ball Earth, that side is nighttime. Remember, for you to see Venus at night, you have to look up into the night sky.
So here MP provides an even less faithful representation of the Earth-Venus-Sun system than a minute ago. But at least he shows it from a top-down view, which makes it easier to debunk.
You can't look over into the day side, past the terminator line, and see Venus. Because that's what they're saying. They're saying if you look across the terminator line, you can see Venus. Well, you'd be looking into the daylight side. You see, this entire thing exposes the total mindless garbage of the ball Earth. It simply is stupid. It doesn't work. The person at nighttime, he can't look across the ball Earth. He can't see around the ball Earth into the sunny side.
So here MP claims that in the heliocentric model, a person cannot look to the west after sunset and see stars or planets, because he would be looking into what he calls the daylight side. He seems to be saying that space itself is illuminated by the sun. This claim is easily refuted by any high-altitude balloon or rocket video, many of which are filmed by flat earthers. They show that space is black, even in sunlight. Here's a clip from Dwayne Kellum's High Altitude Balloon 18 video, which shows a balloon at nearly 100,000 feet above the Earth, in sunlight, and yet space itself is dark. Now, the reason you can't see stars in this video is because the camera's exposure settings can't pick out the dim stars and the bright Earth and bright sun at the same time. Basically, there's too much glare for his camera. If he had managed to get the sun and the Earth out of the frame long enough, his camera probably would have been able to adjust and pick up stars. There will be a link to this video in the description below. Here's another clip from another video of Kellam's, which shows stars and the dim illumination of the sun behind the Earth. You can easily see the Big Dipper there. You can see the illumination in the atmosphere of the sun. This really demonstrates the falsity of MP's claim that we should not be able to look into what he calls the daylight side of space. You can easily see the stars of Orion even encroaching into the lit part of the atmosphere that's being illuminated by the sun.
It's nighttime. It's dark. So even if he sees Venus, let's say for 2 or 3 hours, so I've put the time there, he has to look up. He can't see around the ball Earth. Do you understand? That argument about the looking across the terminator line, that you're looking up, simply doesn't make sense. It exposes the ball Earth as a stupid lie.
So the other glaring problem with MP's diagram is that the sizes of the planets and their orbits were woefully out of scale. I'll show that again. So what MP is doing is he's not debunking the heliocentric model. He's constructing his own ridiculous model and debunking that. That's attacking a straw man. So now I'm going to present my rebuttal evidence using a more to scale top-down diagram of the Earth-Venus system. This is a public GeoGebra model, and the link is included in the description below. The first thing you'll notice is that the sizes of the orbits are very different from what MP showed. In the heliocentric model, the Earth orbits the Sun at an average distance of 93 million miles, which astronomers designate as 1 astronomical unit, or AU for short. In my diagram, each unit of distance is 1/100th of an AU. Thus, we see the Earth orbiting at 100 units, or 1 AU, from the Sun. Venus orbits at an average distance of 0.72 AU. So its orbit is shown 72 units from the Sun, which is situated here in the center. The sizes of the Sun, Venus, and Earth are not to scale, because they would be too small to see if I made them to scale. Let that sink in. The sizes of the Sun and planets are dwarfed by the distances between them. In this model, I have disregarded the Earth's axial tilt, as well as the 3-degree tilt of Venus's orbit to the ecliptic. Both are unnecessary for this demonstration, and admittedly are harder to represent dynamically in a 2-dimensional top-down model. A side-on 2D model could be made with these factored in. To be honest, including them only strengthens the heliocentric model's case. So I'm doing MP a favor by excluding them. This purple dashed circle is Venus's orbit, and the solid purple circle is Venus. The green dashed line is Earth's orbit, and the green circle is Earth. On the equator of Earth, I have a small blue dot that I can move around to simulate the Earth spinning, and a line from that dot to the center of the circle of the Earth, which allows me to adjust the latitude of an observer on the Earth, anywhere from the North Pole down to the equator. This thin dotted line represents that observer's line of latitude. This green dotted line here represents the viewer's horizon, and the red dotted line represents his view to Venus. Finally, there are 3 angles noted in the diagram. Alpha is the angle between Venus and the Sun as seen from the Earth. Beta is the angle that represents how far past the terminator line the observer is, and we could use it to determine how many hours after sunset it is for them. For example, 48 degrees is just over 3 hours, because every 15 degrees is 1 hour. And gamma here is the angle above the horizon that the observer can see Venus at. So we can see that it is possible for an observer to be on the nighttime side of the Earth and see Venus above their horizon. That depends, of course, on the position of Venus in its orbit around the Sun. Eventually, Venus will be so close to the Sun in the sky that it is, for all intents and purposes, impossible to see Venus in the sky, because the sky is too bright because of the sunlight. You'll also notice that the angle alpha peaks at about 46.1 degrees. This represents the greatest elongation, the greatest angle separation between Venus and the Sun. Now, since we've already rebutted MP's claim that you can't look into the daylight side by using another flat earther's video evidence, all we need to do is show that in this model, which is a fair representation of the heliocentric model, it is possible to see Venus after sunset, and we've done just that. This red line is above the green line, which means that the observer can see Venus above their horizon even though they're on the nighttime side of the Earth. Now to address MP's blunder about Venus's orbit needing to be outside of Earth's. For centuries, geocentric models of the solar system placed Venus's orbit outside of Earth, and the Sun's orbit even further out. But Copernicus positioned Venus and Mercury within Earth's orbit in his heliocentric model. This explained why Venus and Mercury were never seen far from the Sun in the sky, while the other planets could be directly opposed to the Sun. Galileo observed Venus through a telescope and saw that it went through phases similar to our moon. More to the point, the size of Venus changed considerably throughout its phases. As the phase waxed to gibbous, the size of Venus shrank, and as the phase waned to crescent, the planet grew in size. This corresponds to a planet with an inferior orbit, one closer to the Sun than Earth. The geocentric models could not account for these phases. We do not see significant phases in the planets with orbits outside of ours: Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, or Neptune. We also never witness them transiting the Sun, which we can see with Venus and Mercury, and we saw Mercury do it only a few months ago. This also is only possible if the planets have a closer orbit to the Sun than Earth. As a coda, here's a look at MP's last mistake in his video. Let's jump ahead to 4:15.
On April the 13th in 2012, planet Venus was visible all night long that weekend. So Jacob Pillowin.
Yeah. So here MP disingenuously uses a space.com article about Venus being visible nearly all night long, despite the misleading headline. Shame on you, space.com, shame. He uses this as evidence against the heliocentric model. MP neglects to show the part of the article that explains why it was possible for Venus to be seen so late into the night. And the text of the article explains that this is nearly all night long, not actually all night long. And their own definition of nearly all night long is a rather specious one, as they mention that it sets sometime around midnight or possibly a little later, and that's not really all night long or nearly all night long. Instead of making another video to debunk MP's misuse of this article, or going through it here, because this video is already almost 15 minutes long, I recommend you watch a previous video of mine where I debunk a similar misunderstanding about Venus from another flat earther, John the Morgile. That video includes a 3D GeoGebra model that you can interact with. and it demonstrates the conditions necessary for seeing Venus hours after sunset. This is what the video looks like, and there's a link in the description below. Many flat earthers claim to understand the heliocentric model, which is why they claim to be able to debunk it. But, as MP has shown us, he either doesn't understand it, or he has to present a false version of it in order to debunk it. So next time, flat earthers, if you're going to try to debunk the heliocentric model, argue against the real heliocentric model. Don't set up a straw man, because I'll knock it down faster than you can. This is Jeff, realistically speaking.